Okay, so I know I told you I wasn't going to make a video about the baler probably, but as you see a baler sitting behind me, that means I ran into enough issues that I think you might be interested in understanding how I fixed. So um, nothing too complicated, but I learned a whole bunch going through this, and hopefully see what it does here in a couple minutes. But I'll walk you through the steps I went through to get it done. So here we go. So this is an old New Holland Super Hayliner 68. I actually baled hay with one of these as a kid. My brother and I, or something near this. It might not have been a 68. It might have been a 69, but it was somewhere near this. And when we were first testing this out, my little brother was here. I might put a little clip of that video in here, but we couldn't wipe the smile off our face when we're playing with this thing, because literally from maybe 13 to 18, we spent our summers chasing these things around, helping Jim Leedy, who was a farmer we worked for, unclog hay out of this thing, replacing shear pins, doing just about everything you can do. So it really put a smile on both of our face, and I'll put a little clip of that video in here. So to go through it, first thing I did was oil, grease, everything. I went around this thing every which way and tried to figure out what I needed to do to get it moving, because it's either sat outside under a tarp, or in my barn for the last year and a half, and it'd probably been a year or so since it was used before that. So definitely just went around it and greased every grease zerk I possibly could find. Any chain that I saw, I sprayed down with WD-40 and just made sure that they were loose. Under here, let's see if I can pull this back. Yeah, so that chain, I greased or oiled that thing up. Yep, cleaned everything out. I either blew it out with an air compressor, or had a little shop vac that I was getting just about every little bit of dust or gunk, anything that was caked in place that might cause a problem. I got all of that out of there. There are an abundance of grease zerks there. Down here, same under here, same with the chain. I sprayed that chain down, sprayed all three of these chains down. Pulled this cover off, sprayed that chain down. There's two gear casings on here, one right here and one on the other side that I'll show you. And I pulled the level plug, which is right here, then topped them off with the 90 weight oil that you're supposed to. Might go ahead and drain them completely this winter. There's a few additional things that I'd like to do to it, but that's down the road. Underneath here is where the twine goes. And here's that other gearbox that I was talking about. There's a level plug. You pull that out, then drop a funnel through this access hole right here and fill it with 90 weight until it comes out that level. Only two, or I guess, rounds of twine in there, because like I said, I'm only putting a little bit of hay through this year. Most of this effort is figuring the piece of equipment out, getting it running, and making sure it's reliable for either later this fall. My parents have a little bit of land or a little bit of hay that I might bale for them later, or specifically for next year when I plow all this up and have better hay out here. So I did all the cleaning, did all of the oiling, checked everything that I could, cleaned everything out, make sure that there wasn't any significant rust, anything that I felt like was an imminent failure hazard. And honestly, as old as this thing is, there wasn't anything. I did not run into any serious issues. So last Friday, I believe, my brother came over. We went and got a truckload of just grass that he had cut at his place and filled at the back of my pickup truck just to see what this thing would do, make sure it would spin, and that it would bale. It did. It worked quite well, but you know, we were just feeding it with a pitchfork, so that gave us some a good feeling. Then I had all of this out here that you saw cut with the sickle bar that I was going to bale Saturday. It wasn't quite dry enough on Friday. It had gotten a little bit of rain on it, and it was not quite ready to bale on Friday evening. My brother called me about midnight and said, thunderstorms rolling in, they're going to be here in about 2 hours. He came over and we piled a whole bunch of it up and put it on a tarp in the barn, which is the stupidest thing ever, but we wanted something good to bale, just to demonstrate that the baler would work. And depending on how that goes, I might try to bale just what's loose out there too, just to pick it up, but we'll see about that. So when we were doing that at 2 o'clock in the morning, my brother said, just get the baler out. Let's see, let's let this thing pick it up for us. At least make it easier for us to pick it up, put it in the truck, and break the bales again in the barn. And so we did that. I baled, I'd guess probably 2/5 of that. And it was picking it up fine. There was a couple of issues getting the speed figured out in the tractor. I've mainly used this 185, Alice Chalmers 185 as a front end loader to move dirt around this place. So I hadn't ever used any PTO attachments with it yet, and I hadn't experimented with the high and low lever as much as well. So there was a learning curve there, but the baler itself worked quite well. Some of the bales that were coming out of it were, I guess, tied together by grass where the blades weren't cutting cleanly. And I think we had it turned up a little bit too tight, so we were breaking some strings as well. So the major thing that I had to figure out was getting the blades to cut cleanly. Okay, so I have that stationary blade installed. That's the one that you see right here. And I have rotated the PTO so you can see the other shearing blade interfacing with that, and as you can see, that is not within 1/32 of an inch. So that would be the causing for the jamming and kind of bales getting stuck together because you weren't getting a clean cut there. So how to change that? Looking in the manual, it explained to me that the way to adjust that positioning was to loosen 4 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then adjust these, I guess, push bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what these do is push on a couple angle irons, and these angle irons are what the ram actually rides on. So that one down there and that one up there, and I was able to move them this way to get the blades to get within that 32nd of an inch to each other. It took some doing. I definitely had a little bit of issue getting the bolts loose. I actually twisted off one of these guys, so I had to go to Steinke and get another plow bolt to put in there. I got some extra ones, and if I tear this thing apart this winter, I might just swap out all of them to make sure that they're all solid. But I got it adjusted. I got it where I could turn the PTO by hand at least, and it slides past. The two shear plates slide past each other well without any issues. All in all, I'm pretty happy with where it stands now. I'll give it a shot. I looked at the timing as well as the other thing that you need to worry about here. I'll tell you about that. I didn't have to change anything here, but I'll tell you about it just so you know what's going on if you ever run into this. See these two marks here? Those are intended to line up with the edges of this arm when it's top dead center right there. You see it lines up pretty good. And then at the same time, you can't see it on here, but there's some punch marks on this flywheel and on this flywheel that are supposed to line up at the same time. Now, what that controls is you need the timing to be right, because this stop here, it goes in when the forks come up to tie. And what those are meant to do is stopping the ram from hitting the fingers. If your timing isn't right, then the stop will be in, and that's when you shear this shear pin that you can see right there. So if your timing's off, you'll be shearing quite a few shear pins, and that's a good indication of that. So pretty good. The knife looked like it cut pretty clean. I made sure I was switching between putting a lot in there and a little in there. The bales could probably be a little tighter. Really, I was listening for any noises I didn't like, any behavior I didn't like. They could definitely be a little tighter, but I'm pretty happy with that. And again, I'm not a professional hay producer here. This is basically going to be used around my place and bale little plots for my family. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. Things that I will definitely check out at some point. I'll remeasure the gap to see if those blades moved anymore. I didn't see any I guess hay getting wedged between there. It seemed to be doing what I would expect it to do, so I think I'm good. No bales broke. I did break that first one with no hay to pack against for the first bale. It's always, or usually, kind of a really wonky bale, so I just broke that one and rebaled it. But not too bad. I'll rake the rest of this mess into a short windrow and see what the pickup does when I do that. So okay, so I can't really complain about that. That's all that was left, and most of that, as you saw, was due to my driving. So gotta get in the habit of knowing where I'm driving and looking back at the same time. So I know it's an art, but I'll get there. But all in all, pretty happy with that. Yeah, I got some stuff to check out in the future, but I think I'm very happy with what that piece of equipment was able to do. And honestly, the thing I learned from this the most is it's not as complicated. I was a little bit intimidated by this thing before I dove into it, but the more I dug into it, the more I learned about it, the more I just kind of took it a little bit at a time, the more I saw that, you know, it's really not that complicated, and as long as I take it a bit at a time, it's not that big a deal. Now, if I ever have issues with the knotter, that might be another thing completely, but we'll see. But for now, I'm pretty happy. Thanks.